Welcome to Kewpies in the Kitchen. My name is Celena Schmolzi, and today I'm cooking with Anna Waters.
Hi, I'm Anna. We're going to be cooking a vegan shepherd's pie, kind of a variation on it, more of a deconstructed shepherd's pie.
All right, let's get started.
Awesome. We're going to start off by doing prep. So we're going to want, for 4 servings, 4 medium-sized russet potatoes, medium diced. So we'll start with that. Water on them until it barely covers them, and then set them aside because they're not ready to cook yet.
Great.
The onions and the carrots and the mushrooms, we're going to small dice them so that they're just a little bit larger than the size of a frozen bee, so when they cook down, all the vegetables are the same size.
So, Chef Anna, when you're dicing an onion, how do you recommend that it gets done?
So I would cut off the end that's not where the root is, so like the kind of smaller, frillier end, and then cut it in half through the root so that you have 2 halves that are held together by the root on one end, and then slice through it and down, and then chop off slices, and it comes out as diced. The gross ends of them, and then splitting them into sticks, and then cutting the sticks into dice. Cut off a little bit of the gross part on the stem, but keep most of the stem. And then we're going to cut them down the middle and then cut them into dices. So I've got a head of garlic, and like 3 cloves of it is going to get minced, and that's going to go in the sauce, and the rest of it is going to get roasted. So you're going to take the whole cloves of garlic, and I have a garlic peeler, but just peel them however you can. And then you're going to take the flat side of a knife, and with your hand going like with the direction of a blade, so you're like starting with the top of it and going towards the knife edge. You're going to smash the garlic a little bit and then put it in a tin foil with some oil and salt and pepper, and wrap up the sides so it makes like a little packet, and you're going to put it in a 375-degree oven to roast.
So, Anna, tell me about this recipe. Why is it important to you?
This is just one of my favorite comfort meals. It's a recipe that I've kind of created over a couple of years. Just like when I became a vegetarian, shepherd's pie was always one of my favorite foods. And so I just wanted to try to make it something that I could eat again. And it's just, It's really nice. You know, the like baking of it that a normal shepherd's pie would. So it's really easy to just throw together when it's 1 a.m. and you want some potatoes.
Absolutely. I totally get that. I've been a vegetarian since 8th grade. And when I first went vegetarian, there weren't a lot of options for vegetarians. You kind of just had to eat things without meat. But now there are a lot of things. There's like the Impossible Burger at Burger King and Beyond Beef and all of these things. So, what is your stance on plant-based proteins and putting them in your meals?
I'm a big fan of like tofu, that kind of thing, tempeh. I like where I work, we use a lot of that kind of plant-based protein, a lot of tofu, a lot of tempeh. We've used seitan a couple of times, which is like a beef substitute. So I think it's a really interesting way to experiment. I think a lot of that really takes flavor really well. So it's not necessarily something that you could replace meat by just being like, here's a hunk of tofu. It's going to taste like meat when you cook it. But I think it is a really good way to kind of incorporate protein in a way that meat would be incorporated into food.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm a huge fan of tofu. I've heard, I have a lot of vegan and vegetarian cookbooks, one of them being Veganomicon, which is a hugely popular book. And in there, they recently released a new edition in 2017. And I just got it for myself last week. Really exciting. But I was reading through it, and the authors noted the newer, rise and kind of ubiquitousness or ubiquity. That's the word, ubiquity. Got it. I'm going to be an English major. Got it. All right. Ubiquity. Cool. Ubiquity of plant-based proteins that are more processed. So like your Impossible Burger at Burger King, where it's not necessarily the whole foods that we're cooking here in the kitchen. It's more, this was made in a factory, and it's a lot more similar to kind of a microwave meal sort of thing. It's not necessarily like your tofu that is still a sort of whole food. How do you feel about those?
So, I mean, I think it's definitely weird. A lot of like, just like a lot of what like being vegetarian is just like kind of replacing meat with vegetables, more plant-based options. So I think if you're going like from an environmental standpoint, like from an ethical standpoint, being vegetarian, like it makes sense that you would maybe want something like if you still like eating meat, then trying to have something that like really resembles that, like an Impossible Burger. But I think for a lot of vegetarians, like part of it is just like replacing with vegetables, like, taking something and like taking the meat out of it and trying to like transform the dish a little bit. So I think, like, I don't think I would necessarily use like Impossible Burger meat in my cooking like this. Like I wouldn't put that in there, even though traditional shepherd's pie has ground beef in it, just because I've replaced it with mushrooms, which aren't in a traditional shepherd's pie, and like just kind of done my own spin on it and made it more my own vegetarian dish as opposed to just trying to completely replicate something else, because there's really nothing stopping me from just eating meat if that's the issue that I have.
Yeah, that's awesome. I like that outlook. And kind of on that note, I mean, essentially, unless you use like butter or like animal milk in your mashed potatoes, this can pretty easily be a vegan recipe, right?
Yeah. I think usually when I make this, it's just vegetarian because I do like the butter and the potatoes. But for today, it'll be vegan.
So tell me about a memory you have associated with this recipe.
Well, a lot of my memories associated with sort of winter. This winter is very sad, but this food is very happy. Let's see. Oh, one time my friend and I were hanging out, we had a sleepover, and we both just really, really wanted potatoes. And then we were like, well, we should have vegetables with our potatoes. So I made this. That was the first time I actually made this full recipe. Because it sounded really good. So when they start to get kind of cooked, like where you can see the edge starting to come off them, add in the carrots.
So why salt the onions while they're cooking?
You generally want to salt your food while it's cooking. If you salt it early on in the cooking process, it doesn't take as much salt to build up the flavor. You also just want to salt kind of in every layer. So like when you add the onions, salt those, and we add the carrots, salt those, to kind of build up layers in the food.
That's interesting. You are a culinary student, yes?
Yes, technically not anymore, but I took culinary 1 and 2 my sophomore and junior year.
So what got you into cooking?
I've been cooking like ever since I was a kid. I would just help my mom out in the kitchen. And I just think it's kind of fun. Like it's a really like good way to express creativity.
Yeah.
I like eating, so cooking naturally.
Who doesn't? So do you plan to pursue cooking or culinary in college?
I mean, the job I have right now and probably the jobs that I'll have later in life, until I have my full degree, is like kitchen, working for restaurants, that kind of thing. I don't plan to go to culinary school, but I'm probably definitely going to keep cooking for my whole life. But in college, maybe take a few more classes.
Yeah. So how do cast iron skillets and like the heat that they need and produce, how does that differ from a regular like stainless steel appliance?
I'm not an expert on it, but cast irons can withstand a really high amount of heat, and they'll generally give you like a really nice crust color, whereas like a stainless steel, like you just won't get that same kind of distinctive color and flavor. Cast irons also just conduct heat really well, so you'll get a fairly even cooking experience. They're really good for frying in because high heat, and then they'll just distribute it really nicely.
Nice.
Okay, so the carrots are like still have a little texture to them, but I can kind of poke through them with my nail. So I'm gonna go ahead and add the mushrooms. With the mushrooms, you'll want to add a little bit more, soak that up, and then salt. If you're doing a non-vegan version, you could also add a couple of tablespoons of butter. That'd be good with the mushrooms. The garlic, now that the mushrooms have cooked down a little bit. Give that a good stir. And then I'm going to pop the lid on and let them cook with the lid on for a little bit longer. So I feel like I should add, like if you want this to have meat in it, just cook ground beef like normally in a separate pan and just like add it at any point here. I would do it like a